Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, and joining me today for the latest I Know That Nerd is the wonderful, I'm going to take Amy's comment off, Sue the Fury, here to join us. Sue, you're known for so many things, and I really hope we get a chance to dig into all of it. But I'm going to start with I became aware of you, I think, because of Con of Thrones, and I've spoken at length about how important that particular social gathering is for me. So let me just start with who are you? What do you
Sure.
do? What do you do in the community? And then I'll get into the Con of Thrones questions.
Okay, so I'm the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Watchers on the Wall. Before that, I was a writer for winteriscoming.net, and I had my own Tumblr called Tumblr of Thrones, which I still have. It's just more of a fun thing I do on the side. So yeah, that's mainly what I do. And these days I also help out with Con of Thrones programming. So that's what I'm about, and that's where I met you.
Right. So you are the founder and editor-in-chief of Watchers on the Wall, which is the definitive news source for all things Westerosi news. That's not, in-world maybe, and I know there's been a lot of real in-world analysis. So what is your background then in journalism?
Not really. When I was a kid, I've always loved writing, but I always thought I would be like a fiction writer, like a George R. R. Martin, basically. But I didn't really have any goals towards journalism. My passion for it came from being a fan of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. I started reading the books in 2005. And then, of course, when the show came about, I got interested in finding out what was going on with the TV show, and sort of fell into the journalistic aspects of it simply because I, had the Tumblr and I was posting at Wick as a fan and wound up writing for Wick when Phil invited me to join that website. So that's how I fell into the journalist part of it. So it was really just a natural evolution of being a fan and wanting to be a part of the fandom in that way. So no, it wasn't never my goal, but it is a natural evolution, I think.
Okay, well, that's we never know where our lives are going to take us. And when you're passionate about a thing, I certainly can understand how that can sort of motivate you to do something that's outside your wheelhouse.
Yeah, for sure.
I would like to take a quick moment to say hello to everyone who's here early to say hi to Sue. I see Jaded
Hello.
Redhead, that's Kelly, good friend of mine. Amy Blackfire. Lady Leaf Underhill, one of the greats. We love you, Leaf. Michael Shelton says, thanks for recommending this stream on History of Westeros. Michael, I thank you for coming to hang out with us. And Amy, that's double points for you. Kate Bertinsky is here. John Webster Film, my regular co-host. Betsy, Mother of Starks, my IRL mom. Like my actual mom,
Mom Stark.
Mama Stark, that's her, a fixture of the streams. She's a lovely person. I see Danny McKay is here. If I missed you, I'm sorry. I'll try to give you a shout out here again in a minute. But so Sue, tell me about the formation of Watchers on the Wall, because eventually you had all kinds of writers and you're getting interviews and things like that. That is not something that I expect a person who just started writing articles somewhere to stumble into. But I've read a million articles on Watchers on the Wall, especially between seasons. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I'm kind of curious. How did you get there?
Well, it was sort of a messy drama. Hi.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
So that's okay. I don't mind it at this point because we've kind of moved beyond that. But at this point, I don't mind kind of going back to ancient history. But it came about originally the founders, who were me, Axe Chucker, Oz, and Marco, who used to be Hear Me Roar at Wick. We all were writers there. And Phil was the original. He was Winter is Coming. He sold he sold Wick to Fansided, and there were a lot of changes there at the time, and we just didn't like the new direction of the website. They had a lot of ideas, but they were sort of a corporation, and they just didn't really understand the website. And we were all writing there for free just because we loved what we were doing, and it really had nothing to do with being a corporate thing. And it was strictly a volunteer for fun thing, as it's always been for us. So we kind of stuck it out through for season 4 of the show. And I think we all kind of felt the same way, like this is not what we want to be doing, and came to an agreement after season 4 that we were just going to start our own website, just with that goal in mind of a new website that is just about the fan community, where we can control everything the way we used to be able to before the other website had been sold. And hopefully people would want to come with us. I mean, we honestly thought it might be a complete failure, but at least we would have tried and not be miserable, which is what was happening. So we honestly did not know whether or not it would work. So we just decided to do it, and luckily it worked out. So yeah, and as far as how things worked out, I mean, Axe Chucker has always been great at interviews, and he had a pretty good relationship with HBO established from his years with Wick. He's a very strong personality, but he was pretty good at working with their PR people there. And, he's actually retired now from actually both Wick and Watchers. He's retired. When the show ended, he's just like, I'm kind of done with all that. So when you see him visit, and if he comes to the con again, he's strictly there as a fan. He's kind of done with all that, but he was a great reporter. And Marco was just always great with statistics and all these things, and Oz was our Unsullied. And I just sort of discovered I had a knack for finding these casting things, because I am sort of good at noticing patterns in things, and I'm very dogged and scrolling through like agency websites. And luckily we had a lot of fans who were sending in tips to us, and I think that having the fandom on our side, honestly, that was the greatest thing we could have had. So it was that combination of things that really made the website take off and continue to be a success for the rest of the show's run. And I think right now is a strange time in the fandom, where I think we're all sort of in between. Everyone is like, what's going on? But I don't know. I think it's an interesting transitional time. I'm sort of interested to see where things are going to go, before House of the Dragon.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's a kind of a fascinating story. And as my mom points out, it is kind of a right place, right time type of thing, almost like you had the thing you were good at, and you had people around you who were as passionate, but say maybe were good at other things. And the team, the team up, you formed your own Avengers squad, and
yes,
you kind of became superheroes. And one of the things that always struck me about the way Watchers did business, so to speak, was that there was that fandom engagement. Like, you could comment on the article and you get a response, and they're talking to you on Twitter, and I think that's because you were all fans first as well. Is that probably accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that we're there for the right reasons, I don't know if that sounds like sanctimonious, but like we're there because we want to be there. We're not like a corporate entity. We're there because we want to just do this for fun. And, the other fans, like in comments, and some people, to be honest, some people never are in comments. They're just there. Hot D, yeah. Some people are will maybe just interact with us on Twitter or just send us emails. Some people are a little bit shy and never really come off the lurker bar. But everybody is there, part of that community, and that's kind of always what made it special and interesting. I don't know. That was always what made it worthwhile to me. I think that's not to sound like I'm changing the subject, but I think that thing kind of translated to the con. So even when the show started to become more controversial and people were unhappy with the show, the conventions were still really exciting because that's what was really important, was all of us being together. And the show is just kind of like almost like an excuse.
Yeah.
So,
I like the way Joe Magician puts it, kind of like an interregnum of the fandom.
yeah.
And you're right. We're in a dark age, so to speak. But this too shall pass. Okay, well, you brought up the convention, so I'm going to talk about the convention. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I am a different human being today because of Con of Thrones. And it has been extremely formative for me in my later life. Most of you know that I have a social anxiety disorder. So large groups of people, I can be around them, but they're difficult for me to engage with. I'm not comfortable. And even the first Con of Thrones, there was a little bit of that going on, but I met people at that first Con of Thrones, like Tony Teflon, like Joe Magician, Aziz and Ashea, and that sense of belonging started there. And then year 2 was Dallas, which is, right over that way, about 20 miles. And I belonged all of a sudden. And okay, you didn't make it for me, but you made it for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it always was for you. I mean, it's funny too that you didn't feel like it's funny to me that you feel like you didn't necessarily know me, because I knew who you were. So I don't know if it's just because I have a really great memory. That's something that I have experienced a lot in my life, that I take it for granted that I have a good memory. And I don't know if that sounds like I'm bragging, but I do trivia. I don't know how much I tweet about that, but I have a background, I've done a lot of trivia, and I was on Jeopardy, and I do things like that, and I didn't win or anything.
On Jeopardy?
Yeah, I didn't win though, so it's.
I gotta make a note.
My stories are not that exciting, because when you're only on it once, it's like, it's fun, but that's, it's not like the greatest story in the world. But so I've always had a really good memory for faces and names, and you're very memorable. I just feel like so, and I knew who you were right away. So I still remember from even the first con, you were right away helping, even with the trivia, and you weren't necessarily that wasn't even necessarily your job to do what you were doing, but you jumped in right away and you were helping correct all these things. And it was frantic, because honestly, it was still a mess, because we were figuring out what we were doing. Right. So, and it was, I noticed these things that you were helping really hard. So
the people that were running the trivia are my friends, and they needed help. So I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yes, Sarah. Yeah. So, I mean, I know, it's just so funny that I don't know, people are memorable to me. And it's interesting you say about the anxiety. I have really bad anxiety. I take medicine for it, and I'm pretty open about it. On Twitter, I talk all the time about I'm having a panic attack, and I'm not being cute. I'm literally having a panic attack when I talk about oh yeah, I just had a monster panic attack. I'm gonna go take some Ativan. I literally mean that. That's just me being open about what I'm dealing with. Because I work in mental health as well. So I try pretty hard to destigmatize, by being open about what I deal with. And so I understand, and I think if I wasn't in the con programming, which pushes me in a leadership role, I would probably feel very out of place. And despite the fact that I'm in that role, I still tend to float around the fringes a lot of activities there. There'll be a ton of people in groups, you know what I mean, chatting and stuff. And I'll still kind of just walk around between the groups, just observing and listening. But it's, I don't know, it's still kind of fun sometimes, just feed off that energy. Because I don't know, even when you don't necessarily feel comfortable enough to fit in, it's still enjoyable getting that happiness. For back. He touched my back. It was everything. Yes. My fellow Jeopardy people. It is an experience. Yeah, it's something. But yeah, I think that sensation, that like that feeling like we don't belong. I think everybody feels like they don't belong. Yeah, drinking always helps. No, that I know it's always. I don't know. When we go to like I don't know the lobby bar afterward or whatever, there's always like that one person who's just sitting there like they don't know if they belong, and I think a lot of us try and just like grab them and pull them in.
Mhm.
You know, because you don't want them to feel like they don't belong, and sometimes they're even like surprised, like, you know who I am, and it's like, yeah, you're here like all the time.
Right.
So I don't.
Right. Like you can't have a presence on social media of some kind in the fandom, and I've never heard of you, and I'm sure the same is true for you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I have that. John is saying that was me. That is literally like the story of me and John being friends. It was just like, oh, you're shy, not you're my friend now, and you just have no say in it anymore. And it's because I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we know what it's like to feel like that outsider, and you know, I have an anxiety disorder also, and I also talk about it so I can normalize it. But mine is specifically social anxiety, which makes those social situations even harder. But like Con of Thrones last year in Nashville was like the first time in my life I ever truly felt like I'm absolutely belong here. I didn't have anxiety all weekend in that mass of how many thousand people? 4,000, 5,000 people. And that's like, that is a milestone I'll never achieve again. My first, like, I belong here moment. So yeah, I'm gonna, if I spend all night harping on why I love Con of Thrones specifically, we'll get nowhere. But so let's hit rewind on this conversation just a little bit. At some point, okay, so the title of the show is I Know That Nerd. At some point, you became aware that you were, in fact, a nerd. Can you remember what that fandom was, what that thing was that you're like, okay, this is who I am?
Oh gosh. I mean, I've been a nerd like my whole life. And I was literally that kid on the playground who's like, that girl's a nerd. But I mean, as far as like a specific fandom nerd, I mean, I think maybe like X-Files was probably it, because it was, I mean, I was watching it since like the first episode and it was a huge thing with me and all my female friends as a teenager, and we were all in love with both like Mulder and Scully, and I mean, we went through all of it, you know, but just that obsessive excitement, and we didn't even necessarily have like the language back then, probably because it was coined. A lot of fandom language was actually coined for the X-Files. So we weren't like using that language, and I wasn't really even deeply involved, you know, in the online fandom, but I had that, like, we used to a lot of times on Friday nights, like go to like a coffee house in the early part of the evening and then just come home for like 9 o'clock in Fox and just watch the X-Files together. And, you know, so yeah, and that was just such a big deal when they came out with the movie. And then they had like Mulder and Scully like almost kissed, but then that goddamn bee, like, it was like very frustrating. So, you know, that was a big one. And then after that, I would say Buffy, like right after high school. I'm still math. I mean, yeah, let me just
Oh my
show you.
God. Oh, hold on. Let me give you the whole screen real quick.
Wait,
there we go. Is Buffy and Angel, or
Buffy and Angel's on the other side?
Okay, but it's still a Buffy. Okay, I got you. But yes, huge Buffy fan. It's in my top 5 shows of all time. I rewatched it this year already. I love that show.
Yeah, it's probably my all-time favorite show, which sounds funny because people would just go, "Oh, it's not Game of Thrones." Shut up, Matt. But like, I think like, I mean, I've had enough time too that Buffy's been over, that I have time to consider like, what's my favorite all-time show. And it's funny, as I was talking, I found myself talking about Buffy at Con of Thrones, but like, and somebody actually got mad like online that I said I sort of mildly criticized the Buffy series finale. But the point that I was making was that I was saying initially wasn't crazy about the Buffy series finale and all. But like I wound up actually loving it eventually, but it's one of those interesting things where a lot of times like time brings perspective because you have all these expectations about what you want from like the finale and you're like, oh, that was a little underwhelming. I wanted this, I wanted that. But in the end, you see what the people were going for. Or maybe it's like the finale, it's still not like a 10 out of 10 for me. But like
I agree with you there, but
yeah. But at first I was like very underwhelmed. And I will say, I also have enough self-awareness to go, maybe part of the issue was that the roommate I was living with just wouldn't shut up. And so when I rewatched it a few years later, I was like, oh, you know what? It's much better when someone's not talking your ear off the whole time. So,
well, and when you have the opportunity to sort of like reflect on the theme that's really running through that finale about female empowerment in general, like Whedon reaches a lot of times. He reaches very far, and he doesn't always quite grasp what he's reaching for. But in general, I think he does a great job. I'm a big fan of Whedon.
Yeah,
in general.
Yeah, and I think all of the writers of the show, a lot of it has sort of aged, and I know that. I mean, season 6 is problematic. Oh yeah, I mean, the way they handled rape is a big problem, but I think a lot of it still holds up well. I mean, my niece is 18. She's just going off to college today, and she has been watching Buffy kind of throughout her life, but especially like the last few years, and loves it so much. She has like Buffy quotes all over her wall, and it's like so empowering for her still, like for her to have like the same posters and quotes on her wall that I had when I was 19 is, it's still kind of amazing to me. So I think that, the value is still there as much as, writers like Joss Whedon do need to be sort of held accountable for their flaws. The good stuff is still there.
Yeah. I concur. I can be a big fan and still look at things and say, that's not great. That's not the best way, even within his best show, which I think Buffy is his best show. But there are episodes of that show which are better than others. And I know that sometimes it's because you're dealing with a studio or you've got actors that leave unexpectedly. That was season 4's big tripping point.
Yeah.
But even so, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point because, I loved Oz. So the fact that Seth Green wanted to leave much earlier, and you can tell it really just sort of butchered a lot of the timeline in season 4. So yeah, it's a big problem. Oh yay! Yes, I love all the Buffy fans. This is not the Buffy podcast.
Actually, there's a lot of Buffy fans that are regulars to this channel. A lot of them. It's a good show. Why shouldn't there be?
Yeah, no, and I think it makes sense too. I mean, it's a fantasy show, so I think it's a very natural overlap, for Game of Thrones fans, and not just that, but I mean, a lot of other fantasy shows and sci-fi shows. It's a perfectly natural overlap.
I saw that you said John St. Baptiste said it's his sleepy time, so I don't expect you to stick around, but I'm just going to let y'all know I'm going to be on his channel talking Tolkien next Friday to do 2 chapters. We'll be discussing a couple chapters from Fellowship of the Ring. So yeah.
Oh.
Hey John, I'll see you on Friday. Yeah, Amy points out we could become a Buffy channel because I have thoughts like I could probably do a 2-hour episode on each individual character and or season, talk about the themes, and not just sort of the core characters, but let me talk about each main bad guy for 2 hours at a time.
Oh yeah, easily, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's such a rich show. I mean, they really did think about specific themes and metaphorical issues. And I mean, And sometimes it's not even subtle, but that's okay because they knew they were playing to like teenagers. And I mean, somebody joked about this, and okay, Double Meat Palace is known to be one of like the worst episodes, but even like the worst episodes of Buffy are still pretty entertaining. And somebody was talking about Double Meat Palace, and they're like, oh, haha, very subtle. The lesbian kills the penis monster. And you're like, you know what? That's actually kind of awesome. So, so even the worst episodes of Buffy are still pretty great and still have a lot of interesting meaning in there. So,
yeah, I mean, anytime they do a robot thing in the first couple seasons, be it with the demon that goes into the internet or Ted, I'm just like, I don't really like those episodes too much. And when Xander tries to make the swim team is the worst episode of the show, changed my mind.
You know what? That one, I'm not going to say the monsters are that great, but it's actually super funny. Wentworth Miller is in that episode, and he is hilarious because if you go back and watch it, not the monster part of it's like, but that's one of the ones where it's funny because the dialogue is funny because there's stuff like Wentworth Miller is one of these swim team guys she's trying to protect, and he's like, oh, you smell horrible. But he's actually really funny. He's just an actor I'd like to see. I don't know. I couldn't really get into Legends of Tomorrow, but I'd like to see him in other stuff more just because I selfishly want to see him, but not watch the show that he's in. And I really tried hard to get into that one. I tried. Damn it. I tried. Isn't it terrible when a show sounds like it has all the stuff you want and then it just doesn't happen for you? So.
Yeah. That's a funny thing to see. I went to watch him, but just not the show he's on. So you go like watch interviews with him and stuff. I've been there. What can I say?
And to what he's saying, I actually liked the Buffy movie, which a lot of people hated. I love both the Buffy movie and the show. So I like them both. They're very different.
Yeah.
Different. So they are.
I agree. Like I actually enjoyed that movie quite a lot. It's ridiculous. It's not the same vibe as the show. The show is much more serious, much grittier, but like as a horror comedy, I thought it was fantastic. And like Rutger Hauer is in it, and
Pee Wee Herman.
Pee Wee Herman's character, who
he's like when he's
what's not to love?
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, it's bizarrely funny. And I mean, even though Christy Swanson has turned into a terrible human being now, she was actually good in that movie. So nothing since then, but she was good in that. So I'll give her that.
JP says, Sixto Sounds says, haven't watched either. Caught some episodes on TV when they were on, but it never really hooked me. Here's the thing. You can watch about 4 episodes from season 1, skip the rest. You'll miss some of the inside jokes, maybe, but like the real formative stuff is the first couple episodes, and then the Angel one, and then the finale.
So like the Pack is really good in the first season. You have to see the Pack. You have to see the Witch because you need to know who Amy is, and you have to watch Prophecy Girl. So there's this, but it's only a half season. The first season is only a half season anyway. So I would say put it on while you're doing other stuff. But it's a lot of shows are like that. First season, it's kind of like DS9. DS9 is my favorite of all Star Treks, but the first season is like 50% filler crap. So it's rough. It's rough.
Okay, well, right on. There you have it. I kind of agree. The first season is not great.
Yeah.
There are moments that are fantastic.
Yeah.
But in general, the first season is not great. But the second season, about halfway through, there's an occurrence, and the show is never the same, and that's where it becomes my favorite show. Well, it's top 5 for me anyway.
Oh yeah, I mean it has incredible stuff in the first season. That's why it's like 50% amazing and then 50% garbage. I mean it has like some incredible Garrick moments, and it has like, just awesome stuff with like Kira and the Cardassians. But then it also has that one about like if wishes were horses, and it's just nonsense. So.
Well, Lady Leap agrees with you. So DS9 is like I haven't seen all of it. I mean, I've seen episodes sprinkled throughout, but everybody tells me that's the one. And I think a lot of Star Trek fans agree that DS9 might be the best.
Yeah,
Many times.
it helps that it was anchored in one spot, which allowed so many species just come on through, and it was sort of forced to, I guess, contend with the fact that it couldn't run away from its problems, which, of course, the other ones are spaceships. They just fly away, but they had to stay put. And I know an easy answer is to say, well, the Dominion storyline, which, yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. But it also, I think, it had, like, of course, the intense spiritualism, which I'm not even like a big spiritual person, but I mean, it was pretty brave in taking on a lot of that new age style spiritualism and having lead characters like Kira, which are they're intensely religious, which a lot of shows are sort of agnostic. You know what I mean? TV shows tend to be agnostic, Yeah, and they took that straight on characters like that. And I mean, and definitely it's like the most sort of queer Star Trek show, which is awesome. I love that. So
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
It's on the list. Unfortunately, this week when I went back to the list, I picked Umbrella Academy, so I watched that instead.
Yes, I love that too, though. So
I quite enjoyed it.
Good.
I don't know if we should talk about the Umbrella Academy. I'm confused as crap by that show, but it's so good. It's so good.
It takes a while to get going, but once it gets going, it's a ride.
Yeah, because my mother I had not seen any of it until earlier this week. I binged it this week. And my mother has been telling me, you need to watch it. You need to watch it. And then season 2 came out and everybody's like, season 2 blew my mind. And I'm, okay, fine, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
It's good. The music is so good. Like, I understand that it's based on a comic book.
Yes.
But you can tell that it's based on a comic book that was written by a musician.
Yeah, definitely. It is. Although I will tell you, have you watched The Boys?
No, I haven't. Although that's like on my list too,
Yeah, you should watch that one. Just because I know that's a total subject change, but just because that's the comic book series I'm reading right now. So that's when you wouldn't. Okay, so The Boys, there's one season out on Amazon Prime, and the second season is coming out like in just a couple weeks. Yeah, and I have read the first 6 graphic novels, and there's like several more. So there's tons of them. Yeah, The Boys is awesome. And I would tell you, it's super violent. And like the graphic novel series really puts like the graphic in graphic novel in every possible meaning of the word. But it's basically about superheroes that are terrible people. So it's it's great. You should watch it.
I probably will. And I know that there's a second season coming for it in like 2 or 3 weeks. So
yeah,
probably ought to get on that season 1 this week.
Yes, you should. And it's a show. It's only like 8 episode season, so it's not like a huge time commitment.
Right on.
So yeah, that way when I'm screaming about it on Twitter, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of those that's like, again, the list for nerds of stuff to watch is just so long. I feel like you can never actually get to all of it. But that's probably higher up on my list now, just because I know there's a second season coming, and so I'll be able to get into that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I generally do prefer that sort of like long arc of storytelling, the way Joss Whedon kind of pioneered with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the way Game of Thrones is literally, there's not this happens in this season and in the next season there's sort of like a new thing. That's the show that's from the beginning to the end. I feel like the Umbrella Academy might be that way as well. So I really like the long arc format.
Yeah, and I mean the Umbrella Academy is also just totally bonkers, and like I mean, every episode you're like, what? I mean, and I think they're definitely. I mean, I like it when shows are generally faithful to the source material, like I guess faithful in the things that matter.
The theme.
Right, the theme, thematically, or I think true to the heart of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But I like it when they change things up like about plot things. So that way, even if you've read like all the comic books, you're like, oh, I didn't know about that. You know what I mean? Like about some things, so that does kind of keep it fresh. And so I think that that's what happens with, I mean, it's, first of all, it's a practical necessity because you can't do every single thing. And that's what they have done with a lot of the shows like Umbrella Academy and The Boys and all of that. So it's a practical necessity, and it does just keep things interesting. And obviously that is something they had to do with Game of Thrones, and it's a controversial topic. Some plot things they changed weren't great, but sometimes they were actually smart. So
yeah. So have you watched Avatar: The Last Airbender? Do you care? Have you heard?
I actually have not watched it. Everyone says I should. The thing is, I'm not a huge animation fan. I will say, yeah, I know that's weird. I have been watching Archer. Like I'm somewhere in like the 6th season because it's a comedy. So I'm very into like, I will watch comedic animation, but I just am not. Even when I was a kid, like I would watch the Muppet Babies, but then I would prefer to watch live action TV. I don't know what it is about animation. It's very hard for me to get into.
Okay, I
weird.
mean, that's fair, but you should try it. That's all I can say. But we'll skip the news that we were going to talk about. Yeah. See, Mom agrees with me. Not a huge fan of animation either, but Avatar: The Last Airbender is awesome, and she is correct.
Oh, okay.
Noted. Makes me want to drink more. Y'all know that Sanrixian does the backgrounds for Archer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just so you knows, but
that's why they're so flawless.
That's why they're so flawless. So X-Files. What was it about the X-Files that sort of drew you in, do you think? Because I just wanted to say, because when I think of like nerd culture, X-Files does not come to my mind. But as soon as you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally is. But it's not like, that is not a show that got me. So.
Oh yeah. You know what? I was raised watching a lot of horror, like Friday night fright shows. My grandmother, my mother and her 5 siblings, they would all just get together every like weekend basically and watch or rent, like, then this is when you had to go to the video store and rent like, Wes Craven horror movies. And we would watch like spooky movies all the time. And I honestly didn't even think I liked those things, but they are sort of, I guess, in my DNA and in my understanding of TV and movies. Like that's what I was raised on. So, when I started watching X-Files with my friends, that first season is full of great episodes. I will say they had a really good first season. There's a few clunkers, but I mean, most of it's really good. I mean, it's got stuff like Eve. It's got stuff like Tombs. You know what I mean? And there are also a lot of the episodes that do set up the mythology, which I think is also it's not necessarily a horror base. You know what I mean? But I do think there's a lot of episodes that feel like horror. It's not just like some weird alien show. It really, like Tombs and Eve and stuff like that, really feels like horror. So I think that's what pulled me in. So it has this sort of, I don't know, DNA of horror that just is something I was raised with. And for me, connecting that with watching it with my friends, it just is a natural extension.
Right. Well, it probably doesn't hurt that they're the 2 best looking FBI agents of all time also.
They were hot together.
They were hot together. They were hot individually.
They were hot. Hot separately, hot together.
I have to completely agree with you there.
Okay, do you remember the Rolling Stone cover? They had Scully, well, I should say their real names, you know what I mean? They had Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny together, like naked in bed. And then they also had a cover with Chris Carter, but nobody wanted to see Chris Carter in bed with them. But they had them actually like in bed in magazines too. We were like, oh! So that blew our little teenage minds, I will say.
Yeah. Well, you're dating yourself.
I'm 41.
Okay, well, I didn't ask, therefore I'm totally in the clear.
Hey, who cares, right?
Right. Level 41, gotcha. But yeah, like again, it's not a show that comes to my mind. When I think of nerd stuff, Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, those are the shows that rush to mind. But like, I don't know. I guess I just never even thought of the X-Files that way. But as soon as you say it, I'm like, yeah, they're dealing with science fiction and horror, all the different types of genre storytelling actually in one show. And again, while I wasn't a regular watcher, I've definitely seen it. I've definitely seen entire episodes, like the one where a giant mushroom tries to eat them, and it's like, this is weird, but it's cool. Then there was also one where there was like a trailer park full of vampires or something.
Yes, that's one of them. Actually, one of my absolute favorite episodes is that one, and it's because it's hilarious. I mean, that's right. I think one of the other reasons why the episode was so successful is the sense of humor, because it kept the show from becoming depressing. You know what I mean? The balance is really important. So,
now, I know there's some like larger through lines narratively in that show too, about his sister, and there's this guy that smokes too much, the cigarette smoking man, and I don't know anything about him, but like I am aware that there's that's going on. So yeah.
Well, you should watch it.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. So should I watch X-Files or DS9 or The Boys, or
Okay, you should start with The Boys, because that's a smaller time commitment, and season 2 is coming soon. So I don't want you to be spoiled for season 2 before you've had a chance to watch season 1. Whereas X-Files been sitting there for 30 years. So watch The Boys first. And then you can slowly ease your way into X-Files while taking in all that goodness. Yeah, see? Watch The Boys.
Okay, I see you, JP. The Boys first.
Yes.
So, starting then from the X-Files, and like you said something that I want you to expand upon a little bit, because it's not something I know or knew, and fandom culture, nerd culture is a thing that's near and dear to my heart. Not just the stuff we watch, but sort of like the fan community and how it grows and how it's sort of self-sustains and all that. And you're talking about a lot of the vocabulary came out of that show. I guess I'm just not sure what you even mean by that. Like,
right. I mean, I think particularly I was thinking about the shipping fandom. The X-Files had a really booming online fandom. I didn't really partake in a lot of it just because I didn't even have a computer at home at that point. But I would peek in from time to time from my school computer. But I've learned in kind of in the last, 10, 15 years that a lot of the shipping language came from people loving Mulder and Scully. Like the word shipping comes from, there were some people who just loved the relationship, like the friendship of them, and then the people who wanted them to be together romantically they wanted a relationship, and they were called shippers.
Okay.
So that's where the term shippers comes from. I ship them is Mulder and Scully.
Right on.
Yeah.
I did not know that shipping comes from the X-Files.
Yes. I mean, and certainly, people shipped people before them, but that's where the term shippers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's where a lot of, people didn't have the internet at home really until the, kind of mid 90s. I mean, some people had computers before then, but it was not widespread until that point. Like I remember they didn't even have computers in our high school until halfway through my high school time. That's how rare it was. People did not widespreadly have computers in their homes until I was in high school. So the idea of there being this online fandom connecting us all didn't exist until the early mid 90s. So you can see why there wouldn't be a language for these things, because there wasn't even an online fandom. People used to have zines they would mail to each other. And that's where they did have some language, there wasn't nothing. Star Trek fandom in particular was really great about that. they would used to have to send like secret slash zines with their Spock and Kirk romantic fiction, and that's where slash came about. That term comes from people wanting Spock and Kirk to be together, but the Star Trek people, official people, were I don't think they were very approving of it because the sort of homoerotic aspects were considered taboo.
Yeah, too taboo for the time anyway.
Yeah. Now, of course, not nowadays.
A billion upvotes on Reddit is what it would happen now.
Yeah. Nowadays, you have the actors. Okay, so you haven't watched DS9, but there's a couple.
I'm familiar with the characters. I've seen some.
Okay. So there are. Okay, so Dr. Bashir, and there is another guy, Garrick. I love them both. I didn't really ship them, but I love them both, and they have a really great friendship. And a lot of people ship them romantically, which is understandable because they do have like kind of great chemistry. Lately, during the quarantine, they have been reading fan fiction, like kind of performing it on Zoom or some, one of the online things for people. So this is how far online fandom has come. That it's gone from zines being kind of like underground and people not talking about Spock and Kirk slash to the point where now actors from Star Trek are now like openly embracing the romantic, kind of couplings that fans really want for their characters. So, which is actually really awesome.
That is really awesome. And like,
yeah,
points to that, which actually points back to one of the things like, the way fandom not only it takes the story. I'm having a lot of really complicated thoughts right now.
Okay.
The author writes, then you consume it, and when you consume it, you put your own thumbprint on it because it's your own sort of lens of perception through which you are absorbing the story, and then you can put it back out there, and then somebody else who hears that. They put their fingerprint on what they hear from you, which already has your fingerprint on it, and this is the way ideas propagate outwards. And like I feel like fandom community has been huge in trying to normalize a lot of sort of marginalized groups. Yes, we have gatekeepers, and they suck, but like. The fact that this like slash fiction, like you're talking about, is part of the process of normalizing homosexuality, and that fan nerd culture. I don't know. I'm not articulating this thought very well, but I just feel like one of the things that the fandom culture has going that no other real subculture does is this thing where we are creators and consumers and sharers, and I make a thing, my friends upvote it, spread it on Twitter, they make a thing, I do the same for them. I'm a patron of this person, they're a patron of that person, and it is this sort of self-sustaining thing that you just cannot find anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's the art of transformation. It's, this thing where exactly we put our own thumbprint on it and we transform it and we make it into something new. And it's a way of exploring ourselves. I mean, it has been particularly important for people in terms of gender and sexuality. There are a lot of people, I think, just for, I think one example, I remember like, I don't know, let's see, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I remember the Sherlock fandom really taking a lot of ownership in terms of that character, because a lot of them felt a connection with him as far as like asexuality or, somewhere on that spectrum. There were a lot of people who saw themselves in that character the first time. And in doing so, whether or not the creators recognized that character as asexual, because Stephen Moffat is a whole ball of issues, but the fans sort of took ownership of the character and was like, you know what, I think I might be asexual, or, maybe gray sexual, or somewhere on that spectrum. So it's something really special where fans can look at a character and analyze them and write stories about them to explore themselves. And I think it's totally fine if maybe someone wants to self-insert. And that's something that people often make fun of, or, call a Mary Sue or whatever. It's like, So what? You can explore yourself, or you can put your friends into a story and have fun with it. Whatever.
Sure.
Why not? It's what is the point of art if not to explore yourself in the world?
That's exactly right. And further to my point, like maybe that character is not written as asexual, but the fact that somebody's lens of perception leads them to feel like the character is asexual, well, what different? It makes no difference what the author intended in that moment. It makes a difference how it makes the consumer of that content feel in the moment, which I'm imagine, when it's something that you can, as you say, self-insert into, it makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel like there is a person, a character you can relate with. And these sort of like meta relationships that we build with our heroes from storytelling actually inform us just as much as our real life relationships do.
Yeah. I mean, people sort of sometimes marginalize it and say, well, it's not real. It's like our brain doesn't necessarily know that. I mean, we perceive these relationships as being just as real. Our brain, so therefore it makes it real. And therefore it changes us and affects us. So yeah, it is real. And it matters. And I just think it's a wonderful, kind of interesting thing. And it's pretty beautiful. And I mean, in the end, it doesn't matter what the creators say. And I mean, I think the fandom, that's particularly A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones fandom, has kind of, in the last few years, talked a lot about death of the author. But I think that, I mean, it applies to lots of fandoms, and you don't have to completely cut off the author, their ideas, but sometimes whether it's a producer or a particular TV show writer, sometimes what they say in an interview doesn't matter. If this is the dialogue they wrote, how you interpreted it, it made you feel, that's what matters. Who cares if a month later they wrote an interview and say, oh, I didn't actually intend that to mean that these two characters were in love. When you saw that scene, you felt that they were in love. So
that's perfectly valid. So in our Slack group, we often will organize watch parties, and we recently watched through the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and I'm convinced that there's a gay couple on screen the entire time.
Oh yeah, the what Pirate with the Eye and the short one.
I'm just like, not that it read that way to me the first time I saw those films, but when we were doing our rewatch, I'm like, that's a cute gay couple. I'm here for this. And it's Disney. I doubt they intended them to be a gay couple, but I'm like, no, it's my headcanon. What are you going to do about it? I mean, you may
Disney,
own
you can't stop.
Right. You may own the characters I love, but you don't own everything that happens off screen. That's up to me.
Yeah. And I don't think you're the first person to think that about those two guys. So, which is why. Yeah, no, like that happens a lot with pairings where, I mean, and sometimes you'll encounter a very like homophobic, writer or director who'll be like, no, that's not what they are. And it's like, you can't stop me. So that's just is what it is. And that's kind of the power of fandom.
Yeah. And honestly, like, that's okay though. The artist has complete control during the creative process, but once they release it to the world, like, it's not just theirs anymore. Their intention, I think, matters, but like, it only matters so much. What really matters is what you think about it and what I think about it, and that only matters to you and to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think their intention is interesting, but that doesn't always matter. I mean, it's also not always consistent. Like, I think one sort of hilarious example, as far as Game of Thrones, since that's who we are. Remember was it third? Okay, I think it was season 3, episode 5 was Kissed by Fire, right? Wait. I'm trying to think. What was the episode when Arya and Gendry said goodbye? It might have been 1 or 2 episodes later. But either way,
I'm not exactly sure, but yes.
Yeah, it was like, I feel like it might have been 1 or 2 episodes Okay. Anyway, it was around then. But so around then, Arya and Gendry had the conversation where she's like, "No, don't leave," and he's trying to say like that he needs his own life, and basically that there he has that line about how you'd be my lady, and shippers were like, "Oh, like that's a whole thing." And then there was an interview afterward where Brian Cogman's like kind of said something about like, "Oh, he didn't really intend it to be." I don't remember his exact quote, but he really didn't intend it to be romantic, or and he wasn't like he wasn't mean about it or anything. He was just kind of like, oh, But what's funny about that is that, fast forward to a few years later, and we have this Arya and Gendry sex scene. So, it's kind of like maybe he's saying that, don't look at them. Oh yeah, no, it's not romantic. But guess what? They actually did wind up being a sexual couple.
I was super happy for that too. I was like, you own it, girl. You're an adult.
Yeah.
It's consenting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought people were being kind of over the top about it. I mean, I think the reaction is because she is someone that they have seen on screen since she was 10 years old. That's right. But you know what? She's legally of age. Get over it.
Right. I mean, I have 4 daughters. 2 of them are adult age. Like, you just got to kind of learn to live with it, y'all.
Yeah, and men have this very, of course, paternalistic idea of, well, I knew her when she was a child. She's not a child. Right. Get over it. Right. She can do what she wants with her body. So, yeah, it was just, I don't want to hear it.
I think we, you are correct, JP. Pretty sells movie tickets. Yep.
Yeah. And that's reality.
And the idea of like, you wouldn't be my family, you'd be my lady.
Right.
I mean, like, of course, I never took that as being romantic. That's him saying you are from a different social class and I cannot cross that line.
Right. I mean, it's super sweet. Like you know what I mean? Like I totally get, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a social class difference, and he's a little bit sad about that because they have been like BFF on this whole road journey, you know what I mean? And they had great adventures, and then they would not be able to be cool like that if they were back at Winterfell. So, but I can understand from a shipper's point of view, like that is actually like a great line. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, I can see how it could be interpreted that way, right. But the context leads me to believe otherwise.
Right. I think, yeah, it's one of those things. Context point of view, but you know what I mean? But
some people want to see what they want to see also.
Yeah. And then again, they wind up having sex. So shippers win, right? Oh, right. But they don't end up together. So it's
which I think is also great.
I mean, I think they were super cute together in the last season when they were together. Like I'm totally guilty of being like, oh, So I'm of mixed mind about that. I totally, like, you'll see on my Tumblr, like I have like Gendria stuff. Like I think it's super cute, but she's got to go her own way in the world.
That's where I'm at. Like, she doesn't need a man. She wanted him then, but she doesn't need him. Sansa don't need no man neither. And I kind of appreciated that about the show at the end.
Well, Sansa is deeply traumatized.
Yeah, like you're right. She is deeply traumatized. So we've been going for about an hour. I'm going to do my mid-roll break. And first things first, if you're here and you haven't hit the like button, do me a favor, show Sue some love, hit that like button. We got 25 likes already. And we're on only 21 people watching, so some of you are probably logging into your alt accounts and hitting that thumbs up, and quite honestly, I'm fine with that. Also, subscribe if you haven't. I would appreciate it very much. We do kind of stuff like this all the time. You never know what's going to be one week to the next, but with that in mind, I will tell you that next week, I think we're going to have a conversation, me, John, Nessie, and I don't know who I'm going to get to guest, but I'm going to reach out to some people. we're going to be trying to deconstruct the hero tropes and archetypes. We'll be talking about heroes, Byronic heroes, anti-heroes, reluctant heroes, superheroes. Basically, if it's got heroes in it, we're going to be talking about it. Trying to decipher how the definition has changed over time and how heroes are perceived differently in different cultures. Ought to be a really good time. I believe that John Webster, my co-host, has a stream coming up this week where they'll be watching In Bruges or discussing In Bruges.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, and John dives real deep. He's going to deconstruct that movie. John, if you're listening, I saw you were here earlier. Tell me what time, what day, so I can make sure to shout it out. Want to make sure everybody knows what you got coming up. Nessie is not streaming this week. I don't know when her next thing is. Got to make sure to give my Patreon shout outs. Let me pull up my list, make sure I don't forget anybody. We got the High Council, which is Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sir Maura Lee of Starfall, and Sixto Sounds, a.k.a. JP. And, of course, the lords and ladies of the realm. Right now, it's just ridiculous Ed Tollett. But, Sean, you've been here forever, buddy. The alpha patron, we love you. And, yeah. That's it for Patreon shout-outs. We have a Patreon. I'm not going to... We don't have any exclusive content. That's not how we roll. Nothing that we make is behind a paywall of any kind. But if you wanted to show some support in case somebody needs a new microphone, new camera, what have you, or we're actually planning HereBeCon right now, which is going to end up being like 15 of us in an Airbnb, I'm sure. But if you wanted to join the Patreon, go ahead and do that. I'd appreciate it. I'm not going to beg for your money. It's there if you want to support this community. And if not, please feel free to enjoy everything we make absolutely free. I don't have anything else for the mid-roll that I can think of. John is doing In Bruges on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern with Bernie. Beef and Bernie. If you're on Twitter, you probably have seen her. She's a friend of the channel. Yeah. Looking forward to that one, buddy. And I saw your comment earlier about the Dark Crystal. So, yeah, I'm paying attention. Jerk. Okay, so back half of the show. This is where, we have done a really good job up to this point, staying fairly on topic. I am not afraid to let the conversation meander in completely any direction now. So I wanted to ask you. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, you already answered this. You started the books in 2005. You came onto the show basically probably from the moment it started airing. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
So at what point did you, again, like everybody I know comes through A Song of Ice and Fire fandom, or at least like 95% of my online friends come through that fandom. At what point did you know this show was going to be the next big thing?
I think we were all hoping. I think, of course, we all desperately wanted it to just last. You know what I mean? It was one of those things. And I think we all knew that if it got through one season, that it would go all the way. So that was sort of the key. And we were all following, I was a regular sort of commenter and, I regularly read at Wick. So I also, I don't have it anymore, but at the time I had a YouTube channel where I used to upload the trailers. Eventually HBO shut that down because they were all pirated. So, but I had a pretty good amount of data to sort of work with basically. So basically whenever trailers would come out, I I mean, if HBO uploaded it, I wouldn't bother. But basically, I was just trying to be helpful for like Wick. Certain trailers would come out and they would only be available on some random like Dutch channel. You know what I mean? So we would hunt it down and I would upload it on mine and I would give like Wick the link. So also, HBO used to upload certain exclusive videos that were on HBO Go. And now those are the little short extra videos that you see on HBO.com, but they used to only be available on HBO Go. I used to upload those to my Steve the Pirate YouTube channel. So I mentioned this because that was the sort of data I could kind of tell where things were going. So at first we're like, okay, it seems like it's getting okay ratings, the first episode, like, okay. Boardwalk Empire, I think it was Boardwalk Empire, was coming out like around the same time and it was doing kind of about the same. And they were both very expensive shows. So we were like, oh, they're very expensive. And they had just in the last few years also had Rome and Deadwood come out too. And they were also very expensive shows that were awesome and got canceled because even though they had viewership, they got canceled because they were so expensive. So it was like the show needs to have like a really good viewership or they're going to cancel it, even though it's awesome. So I think everyone was kind of paranoid because you know how obsessive this fandom is. So what happened was it didn't.
Boy.
So this is a lot of information because this is how we roll. We're like obsessive. Basically, like Marco Hear Me Roar, he would every week do like a ratings post and every week it would just keep going up and up and up. And I could see like on all these trailer videos that I had uploaded in all those little extra videos steadily would just get tons and tons and tons of views from around the world. And I could see too, was interesting is like YouTube, I don't know anymore because I don't have a channel anymore, but I could see like the gender breakdowns of things. And I could see that like Game of Thrones, these Game of Thrones videos had like a pretty large percentage of female viewership, which I thought was a really good sign for like merchandising and all that stuff. So it seemed to me by like 3 or 4 episodes in, I was like, this is going to go the distance because if it's already trending up like this, it's definitely going to last the season. And I can't remember when, but they renewed it like fairly quickly.
Right.
So, I mean, I think at first we were just waiting with bated breath to see if it would like last season, but the fact that we saw it trending upward like that so quickly. So that was a lot of setup to tell you that we knew fairly quickly.
Yeah, but that's really interesting. But well, you have like not just, oh, we knew early, we knew soon, we knew quickly. Like there's like you've got the deets. I like the deets.
Yes, we had data.
So like I didn't come to it until so I got the first 3 books for Christmas 2011. So the first season was out. I'd never heard of it. I was living in the middle of nowhere, moved back to Dallas, got those books for Christmas and fell right in. So I found it fairly early on, but like it was already kind of like a phenomenon at that point. And after only 1 season, which that doesn't happen just a whole lot with shows. And it became just the biggest thing in the world. And then you had the biggest website talking about it. So like, what's it like to be a rock star?
I mean, who knows? I don't know. Like, I mean, then the first show, okay, so like on the first season, it was interesting because I only started writing for Wick in the second season. The first season, it was all men, which, believe me, I noticed. Because, yeah, that's just how it was. It was, I mean, they were fine. They're good guys. But they noticed, actually. I think, I don't want to speak for Phil, but I think he realized, first of all, that they needed another writer because they were just very busy and figured out, that was first of all. And they also wanted to start a Tumblr, and I had a Tumblr and it was pretty successful. And then I think they figured out that they needed a woman. It's like Joe Biden start hunting for a VP. Like he's like, I need a woman. So
right.
Yeah, so they knew me because I posted at Wick. So I just kind of hit all those buttons and came talking to me, and I was like, heck yeah, I do. But I did specifically realize that they needed a female voice. And one of the first articles I wrote was a long piece about the issues that the show had with female characters in the adaptation. It was, what was it? Something about the adaptation of the Women of Ice and Fire. Because there had been some issues with the adaptation in the first season. I just didn't like some of the changes they'd made with Catelyn. It was apparent they'd cut out Shataya and Alayaya in favor of Roz. I mean, I like, Esme Bianco, she's great, but there's, Roz is very different in terms of position than Shataya, who, is an independent woman running her own brothel. Like certainly you guys know that I don't have to go down that channel. So, and Sansa, in season 2, like they cut out a lot of her stuff with Dantos. I mean, they wound up, I think, restoring some of that later in season 4, but in season 2, I just, I had a lot of sort of issues with that. So it was interesting. I think these days women really are sort of leading the fandom in a lot of ways, but early on in the fandom, it was mostly men, which it was not equal.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like I would say 80% of my viewership is women.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You're doing something right.
Not hurting my feelings. I'm just saying, but and I really appreciate the story that George wrote. Women aren't always treated well, but like he's clearly, and he's an older gentleman, and he's comes from a certain time, but I think he's really trying quite hard to do his best to treat the women characters well in his books. Mm-hmm. I mean, as well as the men get treated anyway. Like, yeah,
he's not great.
Right. But he is taking his time to, like, with characters like Brienne, especially, like, to at least take a moment to consider it. And he's written some, like, Daenerys is a feminist icon, I think, in a lot of ways. She takes charge. She's empowered, but she's still quite, she's very feminine in her approach, too. I mean, maybe season 8 notwithstanding a certain moment at King's Landing, we'll just not talk about that. But for the most part, Daenerys has always come across as like, she's a woman. She's very much a woman, but she's also very much a woman who's in charge and in control. And I love that George has written her that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are definitely questionable things, and it's such a sort of deep topic. It kind of, you need your own, I think, discussion for that. He is definitely, he's like an older liberal guy. Like he feels like he's a great liberal, but he's sort of like a liberal at the 1970s. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think there's, he's like, oh, Daenerys gets married at 13. Like that's normal for, I'm basing it on a medieval society. And you're like, no.
Never normal.
No,
never.
He has a sort of, I think, a very superficial understanding of certain matters because he's basing it almost on other like novels. You know what I mean? He doesn't have a genuine understanding of certain things. It's, it kind of is what it is. But I think he has admitted sometimes to having made mistakes, but you can't very well go back and correct that. I mean, you can correct a typo. You can't really completely change part of a novel. And he's also just pretty old. So he's just trying to write the 2 books that, we're all screaming at him for at this point. So it kind of is what it is. But he has done quite a few things right. And nobody's perfect. It kind of is what it is. And the adaptation process has been interesting because these are absolutely mammoth books. And I think there are things that we don't even, or I should say, they don't even predict going wrong. Like, you could have a scene that seems totally okay, and then in the editing process winds up looking totally sketchy because they accidentally snipped out, some little thing. It's, that's just theoretical, but, filmmaking, TV making it's a lot.
Yeah. any kind of when you translate from one media to another, one medium to another, there's challenges. Writing a book is inherently different than filming a TV show, but like I feel like they did a pretty good adaptation, at least for like the first 4 episodes. But I'm not. You want literary analysis? I can recommend 15 people to you, and I ain't one of them. There's a lot of people in the fandom who have done some really fantastic analysis of, all of A Song of Ice and Fire. That is not my forte. You want me to talk about the psychology of a character or like the ethics and morals of what choices are being made. Okay, I'll talk about that. But as far as like, oh, this is a good adaptation, and the gender studies, I've read so many essays about women in A Song of Ice and Fire, from Catelyn to Melisandre to Brienne to Sansa and Arya. It's really changed my view on that. And I don't know, do you feel like A Song of Ice and Fire has more on the bone there, or is it just because it became so popular as a TV show, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think A Song of Ice and Fire certainly has more to work with because it is, because there are 5 books to work with. It's the reality. We are inside Brienne's head for like all of A Feast for Crows. That's kind of her book. It's her and Cersei's book. You know what I mean? That's just kind of, I think, the reality of it. So there is so much to work with, whereas the show, we have to trim all that down. You know what I mean? And then otherwise, she's a character, but she's a supporting character in a couple other books. It's just, it kind of is what it is. And then we have, picture that family tree of all these different clans. Look at that for a TV show. And they have to, when they're depicting characters in a show, it's almost like a quick thumbnail. You have to convey what a character is in a heartbeat, like kind of with their costuming, with their posture, with that's why they have to sort of almost dumb it down, which I hate to say, but it is like you have to convey who somebody is inside of like 30 seconds, rather than spending 2 pages of Tyrion's narration describing who this character is on a page, which is of course more in-depth and clever and interesting. You can't do that in a book, so the books will always be better because of that. That just is like what it is.
I agree. The books are always going to be better.
Yeah.
I cannot deny the impact Game of Thrones has had on our culture and our fan community, but the books are always going to be better. I agree. You have a favorite,
of course.
You have a favorite character from the books? Favorite character from the show? Are they the same? Are they different?
I would say I guess it is a little bit different. Like, because I have always said that my favorite POV characters were Arya and Tyrion. But I do feel like the show took away so much of Tyrion's grayness that he was not as interesting to me. So I would not say Tyrion was my favorite in the show. But I guess I have different tiers of favorites, because you can't. You know what I mean? Like, you can't compare like Arya to like Jack and Hagar in terms of because I have like my POV characters, and I have like my second, like my supporting, like Varys is like my, like my favorite secondary. And then I have like my third row, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, who's your favorite this character and who's your favorite this? You know what I mean? You need to have like a whole chart, because you really just can't compare them. So yeah, I would say like Varys is, in the books, Varys and Littlefinger. But I do feel like, again, the show took away so much of Littlefinger's nuances, specifically because Littlefinger is off the page a lot. He is somebody that he doesn't actually say a lot. He kind of is always just like, and slipping off into the sunset and being sneaky. He's actually not present a lot of the times, or he's just off being a sneaky fucker. You know what I mean? So they had to give Aidan Gillen a lot more to do in the show. Right. Yes, the show does have the better live music. So I I was gonna say I do like how they adapted and brought in a lot of the music.
Yeah,
that was cool.
I remember watching episode 2 of season 8, and the moment Daniel Portman started singing "High in the Halls," and I was like already crying and had goosebumps, and was just like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they're actually doing Jenny's song!" Like, Shonleys were like, "What? It's a nice song," whereas all of us like ass waffles were just tears pouring down our cheeks, and I'm like, "We love it so much, thank you."
Yes, although I mean, I think that people like it so much to the point where they overlook the flaws of that episode, which is, I know that's like sacrilege for someone to say that, but I don't know. I think it's funny because people are always like, "Oh, watchers won't criticize anything." I'm like, I criticize every episode, and I think I'm one of the only people who's like, I would give that episode like an 8 out of a 10 because the first half of the episode is actually kind of clunky, and I feel like the editing is not that great. The first half of the episode is not nearly as good as the second half of the episode, and I think that because you get to the end, and that final editing and that final sequencing is so beautiful that you kind of forget the fact that the first half is not as good.
Yeah, I don't actually even remember what happens in the first half of that episode, but I do remember like everybody sitting around the fire drinking and Tormund like stuff pouring down his beard as he's trying to hit on Brienne. Just, I did love at least the back half of that episode.
Yeah, the second half is like flawless.
Right,
Yeah.
but I'm that kind of person where like if you spend several episodes making me love characters and then you have those characters sit at dinner and just have a conversation, I'm probably like this the whole time. Plot is great. Plot gives the characters something to do, but for me, it always comes down to I love a story because I love the characters in the story.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I guess that's why I don't find Tyrion as interesting, because they did sort of want to turn him into this less interesting character, which is kind of interesting because in that, I'm saying the word interesting again, but in those last couple episodes, you had Tyrion being super clever again, and then sort of turning Jon against Daenerys. I do feel like that's actually a very gray action, and it is something that I believe book Tyrion would and maybe will do. You know what I mean? Like I know a lot of people are hoping and praying and swearing that that's not going to happen in the books. I think it probably will, and I believe that that's something book Tyrion would do. But I wish that we had seen that gray Tyrion all along, because it was kind of weird to see him do that after having seen so much of the gray Tyrion, sanded down into, they were so many times, like for instance, when the killing Shay, they kind of had her attack him first. So it was like, oh, he's just defending himself.
Yeah. And I'm absolutely with you. And it's because everybody liked Dinklage so much and liked Tyrion, and they're like, we don't want to alienate our fan base by having him turn as dark as he does. But like, I like Tyrion's one of my favorite POVs to read as well, and he was like one of my I like this guy early in the story, but by the time you get to the end of Dance with Dragons, you're like, what a jerk. I mean, he's contemplating killing Penny just because he's annoyed.
Yes. And I mean, I love Penny, and I mean, I guess I understand why they cut her, because they didn't make him be a douche. So they didn't need her to bring him, she's the one who really pulls him back from the brink in the end and helps bring back his soul, kind of. So, but yeah. I mean, he really is so ugly the way he treats everybody. I mean, it really kind of goes like too far. I don't think as highly of A Dance with Dragons as people. I don't know. I feel like Brendan Beefish and a lot of the guys in the community have been talking up A Dance with Dragons so much that they're like over talking it up. I think it's like good, but I don't think it's as good as, the first 4. I know it's like it's an overly popular opinion. I still do believe A Storm of Swords is like the best book,
I'm a Feast for Crows guy, but
yeah, I do love A Feast for Crows.
Yeah, But like, if you love A Dance with Dragons and it's your favorite, great. If you are like, it's overrated and I don't like it, I mean, not great. I wish you enjoyed it more, but you know, everybody's opinion is what it is, and it just always comes back to that. We all have
drags.
Well,
yeah.
We all view the world through our own lens, you know, and what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I say, it's this Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, it's good. It's just like, if you have to rank them, I would say it is the least good. But I would say I do actually love A Feast for Crows, because so many people, I feel like they don't get it. But I feel like A Feast for Crows is really important for George R.R. Martin's view, because he is a pacifist. He's very liberal. I feel like that shows his worldview. I mean, it shows the devastation of war. Like, this is that guy who was like a conscientious objector to Vietnam. Like, this is what happens. So Brienne is the view of what the War of Five Kings has done to with the futility of, chivalry in all of this. Because some people still, I think, they have this kind of romanticized view of like Riker and that kind of, life, and I think that, the fandom still has that romanticized view, and it's like, no, like, they did bad things and they wrought destruction on people's lives. Like, look what happened. Look what they did.
Yeah. You're preaching at the choir here a little bit. You don't have to convince me. There are I don't know if you specifically remember this, but for Con of Thrones 2018 in Dallas, I pitched a panel that I then did, which was remembering Ned Stark, in which I basically argued Ned is not as honorable as all you people say he is. So like I did my best. Now, maybe he's more honorable and more moral and ethical than a lot of other people, but like gray looks white next to black, but he ain't white. He is definitely still in the gray. So yeah, you don't have to convince me that they're all jerks. Every one of them.
Yeah, I like Ned, but like, I feel like, he made a choice to lie to his wife for like 15 years, knowing that the position it put her in, the position it put John in, so that Catelyn's resenting this baby for 15 years, and both of them are miserable. Like, and I know why he did it, of course, but like, it's not a good situation. So yeah, nobody's perfect.
No. Like, I see John is like over there sticking up for that. Literally, I'm a Stark, man. I'm allowed to talk about my family this way.
We know why he did it, but you just think, could he have come up with a better solution?
Yes, he could have.
I think he could have. He was smarter than people. I think Ned Stark was way smarter than people give him credit for.
Yeah, but going to search, like, he's smart, but he did not know how to play the Game of Thrones, which is why he lost it. Which is why he dies before the end of the first book. Spoilers, y'all, if you didn't know, Ned Stark died.
He can lie. He just doesn't like lying.
Right. And he can actually be very good at lying. He had everybody convinced for a decade and a half.
He can lie when he wants to. We know that.
I see you, Matt.
Brienne, who places her honor above everything. I don't know. I'm very cynical about that quality.
Yeah, Brienne is one of the most.
I love Brienne, though.
I think she is sort of like more ethical, moral than Ned is, even. But she's
so innocent.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's the difference, is that Ned is not innocent anymore.
Yeah. I think Brienne, I'm so interested to see where she is going to be. Like, I know we get like a taste of her in like sample chapters, but like, I really want to see where she is in the Winds of Winter, just because she's still, I know she's both gone through some ugly things in A Feast for Crows, but she still believes in this quest. You know what I mean? So I just want to see where she really is in the Winds of Winter. Now, is she still going to like believe in this, that deep rooted sense of honor in her quest, and now that she has had this encounter. I don't know if people have been reading sample chapters, so I'm just dodging things. So.
Yeah, I've read them all. We tend to be full spoilers here.
Okay.
If there is a spoiler, make sure you just wave our hands at you or something. But yeah, I generally talk about it all because everybody I know comes from the A Song of Ice and Fire fandom, and 95% of them read the spoiler chapters anyway.
Oh.
So anyway, yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, no, I love Brienne. She is actually one of my favorite characters, and I will defend her. Like, some people I don't know, I love her chapters. And like, some people are like, oh, they're boring. I think they're super interesting because a character who is innocent and truly believes in honor and is basically good at heart is, I think, hard to write. And and she's still out there like willing to like fight and kill when she has to. Like, I think that kind of conflict it's just interesting. Yeah. So I love her, even though I won't say she's perfect, but I do love her.
Yeah, she is a very high bar. I don't think anybody's closer to being sort of like morally upright than Brienne is. And furthermore, without her books or without her chapters, we wouldn't have Richard, the most agile of crustaceans, who, I love the nimble dick crab love that has come to happen in the later years of the fandom. Thank you, Yoke Boy. I know that was you, but
the nimblest of dicks.
The nimblest of dicks.
No, without her, we wouldn't have "I'm too droll to die," which is like my favorite line. Shagwell.
Right.
I don't know. That whole chapter is just such a ridiculous mess of like, what is happening? And I just love it. Like, that's what happens when you go on a quest, is you wind up killing some fool. And he's just like screaming. I just love it. It's ridiculous.
I agree with you, Matt. Like, I want She-Wolves of Winterfell more than I want the Winds of Winter right now.
Oh God, yeah. I want more Dunkin' Egg.
Yeah.
Which sounds like breakfast, the way I just said that. But.
Hey man, I would eat it up for breakfast too. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh my gosh, it's we got about maybe 25 minutes left, y'all, and I have not asked the chat for a single question. Do you guys have any questions for Sue? Because I've got a couple that I'm going to throw out. Chatters, if you've got a question for Sue the Fury, now is the time. I will keep my eye on the chat. But Sue, what guest for Con of Thrones have we not had? You can't say George, okay?
Okay.
But who is like the dream guest for you to get that's never been there?
Oh, oh God.
I'm personally, like, this is the person that I want to meet and all that.
I really would like to get Gwendolyn Christie, but she's pretty expensive. But I would like to get her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes. Yes, Gwendolyn Christie. Yes, it would be nice. I mean, God, honestly, there's so many. I would like to try and get Tom Blas-Chiha, who's Jaqen H'ghar.
Okay.
It's probably a little more realistic. So maybe I'll try and get him next year.
Right.
I can live out my Jaqen H'ghar fantasies.
I fully support this. Like, interesting character. Gwendolyn Christie would be awesome too. Really would. My only complaint is that there is a distinct lack of Starks at all the Con of Thrones. So just anybody who's got Stark in them would be great. Of course, most of them went on to bigger and better things, didn't they?
Yeah, they've been very busy, so good for them, I guess. Busy having babies and all. Who makes it? Okay. Oh my God. The pizza places keep closing though, don't they? I haven't been back there in a while. Oh God. You know what? They keep closing the places, though. I haven't been back in a few years. I used to go to A&V Pizza, and they closed that. They closed Annie Dots. Okay.
So the
Okay.
answer is there's no good pizza left in Worcester.
Yeah. Okay, so I am House Slytherin. Proud Slytherin, yeah. Ooh, okay. Who would I marry? I'd like to live dangerously and marry Jamie.
Okay.
Who do you marry, Steven?
Who would I marry?
Yeah, which Aswaff character would you marry?
Aswap character or Game of Thrones character? Because the answers are different.
It says Aswaff character in Amy's question.
I'm going to go with Daenerys.
Ooh, we're both living dangerously here.
Yeah, I mean, like, I might end up roasted, but at least with Dragonfire, it's probably over really, really quick.
I know that Cersei would try to kill me, but that's why I like to live dangerously.
Oh, yeah, by the way, Matt wanted me to try to pronounce the name of that city. Yes, I know. It's not Worcester.
It's Worcester.
It's Worcester.
Worcester, Mass. That's where I'm from.
Right. Jaded Redhead, Kelly wants to know, what's your favorite adult beverage?
Vodka cran. I'm basic. I was a bartender, and I have found that most bartenders just drink super simple things. It's really funny. Yes, Slytherins, come through.
I myself am a Hufflepuff, but like some of my best friends in the world are Slytherins, so I get you guys. Okay, when I play D&D, that's when my like evil conniving side comes out, or when I play Magic the Gathering, it comes out. So I understand the Slytherin. I'm just not one myself.
Ah.
But I do understand you.
You grok it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions right here at the moment. Some maybe they'll pop in. I will keep my eyes peeled, chat. So feel free to keep throwing them in there. Okay, Sue. Let's make a movie about your life. Okay? I need 3 things from you. First of all, who would play Sue the Fury? Who would you? Yeah, cast yourself in your own life story.
Okay. Kate Winslet.
Hey, like I'm
aim high, right?
Right. You can have anybody you want. Kate Winslet. Who will direct the film about your life? I'm one of these people that believes that a director has such a huge impact. So like I'm interested.
Interesting. I'm trying to think of someone awesome. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Why are like no directors coming into my mind right now? I'm like,
well, I'm not going to leave you hanging for too long. If
I like can't think of any directors that I like right now. That's not so funny.
Yeah, I do tend to blindside people with this question. I don't let them think about it ahead of time.
Yeah, no, that's so funny. You should give me. What's her face who did Wonder Woman? Give me her.
Okay.
Patty. What's her name? Patty. Yes, yeah, Patty. Give me Patty.
Hey, I'm here for that too. I loved Wonder Woman. I loved Monster was her film as well, and I thought that was fantastic. So yeah, and now what are we going to title it? What's the title of the Sue the Fury story? Because there's got to be
Straight Out of Worcester.
Straight out of Worcester.
Yeah, I had like 10 years of theater training to like mitigate the accent and take it.
I just heard you. I just heard it when you said theater.
Yeah, there are some words that like I'll be at work and like, you know, the patients will be like going in for drinks and I'll be like, I'm like, get a drink of water and just like stay out of the way. like there's some words I just can't say. Like it's water. It's a water fountain. Although I learned not to say bubbler. Like, because Ohio, it's a water fountain, but I still say water fountain. You know what I mean? It's like, right.
I mean, I'm not from the East Coast, y'all.
You are Texas.
I'm definitely from Texas.
Yeah, I lived in Texas for 2 years in Wichita Falls.
Oh, Wichita Falls.
Yeah, Wichita Falls, Texoma.
That way, I'm right outside of Dallas.
That's right. I used to have to drive to Dallas all the time. So
I am sorry. Actually, the drive from Wichita Falls to Dallas isn't too bad. West from Wichita Falls is some of the worst part of the world to be in, period, anywhere.
yeah, it was not bad a drive. I mean, although I kept having to drive past a speedway, and so the traffic would be really bad. Like, is it Texas Motor Speedway? Is that the
Oh,
one?
yeah, in like North Fort Worth.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That was the route that would take me by there. So sometimes I would hit that traffic and just be like,
So that's not
ugh.
been that long ago then that you lived in Texas.
No, I was there. I was there from like 2006, 2008.
Okay.
So
Because I
yeah.
want to say Texas Motor Speedway was pretty new at that time too. Then it has not been there all that long.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think what surprised me there, because Texas is just so flat, and I'm a New Englander, and in Northeast Ohio is like pretty hilly, so like it's just so flat in Texas. And when I would drive, like it, when you drive on the highway, like, and I'd be driving, like we had like a pickup truck, the winds would like blow me like over on the road. I didn't know like winds could do that. Like, so that's actually really scary.
Yeah, you are right. That part of that's like the southernmost portion of the Great Plains that you're moving through. If you keep heading south from there, you get into what's called the hill country, and it is not nearly as flat. But you are correct. That whole area used to be an inland sea.
It's terrifying. I'm not used to flat. I'm a hilly girl. I come, like, Worcester is like the Seven Hills city, so I'm hill girl, which is bad in winter when it's snowy. But
there it was again with winter. And I kind of love that accent where you like the R's just fall off the bottom. Chowder.
it's trash.
No.
Nah. Although I did actually used to go to Harvard Yard with my friends. We'd cut school and go to Harvard Yard, and then we go to like Boston Common and like just walk up around and go to like Faneuil Hall and stuff like that. But good times.
Right on, right on. Didn't know you lived in Texas.
Yeah, I spent 2 years, and that's where my husband was from Texas. So
Wichita Falls.
mm-hmm.
Is he in the military?
He was. He was.
Yeah.
He was. Yeah.
Makes sense now. Yep. I don't remember what's in Wichita Falls, but I know there's some military base there.
Shepherd Air Force Base.
Air Force Base, yep.
Yep. Long time ago.
My little brother was in the Air Force, and he's been out there many times.
Yeah, it's basically an Air Force Base and 2 Walmarts and a lot of Mexican restaurants.
Okay, so y'all, we're getting down to about maybe 10 minutes left. Your last chance to get questions in. Sue, just in case I forget, I won't probably, but just in case I forget, thanks so much for doing this. This has been a really fun conversation. I always enjoy doing the I Know That nerds, and honestly, some of them I know better than others.
I'm glad to do it.
It's been great fun. We need to get you back podcasting again.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. I don't podcast all that often, I'm a little bit rusty.
So like, but now that I have you live on camera on the spot, I need you to commit to doing this all the time again.
Oh, okay. I have to think of something to say. I'm an occupational therapy assistant. I work in the mental health field at a hospital. If you see on Twitter, I kind of vaguely allude sometimes to working in the field of like healthcare. I'm deliberately vague just because I work for the state, so I sort of can't really talk about specifics, and it's just safer that way. And when you work in mental health, you kind of want to keep your private and professional life separate, just for safety reasons. So yeah, it's occupational therapy. That's what I do.
Relatable. Keeping them separate. I mean, like, I don't do that, but I also am not in a position where I have confidentiality concerns and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love my job. I do. And I've honestly, I've never really had any issues with patients as far as safety. The one time in all of my careers I've ever had anyone threaten me has been in Game of Thrones world. So, yeah. So, yeah, the job's not usually an issue.
So Amy wants to know which TWOW POVs you're looking forward to the most.
Ah, I think, I mean, probably like the Brienne stuff, like that, like I mentioned before, and also like I have loved like the Mercy sample chapter we saw was like so
Oh,
amazing.
so good.
So I need more of that. I'm like, yeah, I'm like dying because Arya is probably like I think I mentioned that she is like my favorite. So I'm just more Arya. I feel like such a sort of a stereotype sometimes Arya being like my favorite character, but I just love her and her journey is so fascinating to me. So
There's
I love that.
nothing in the world wrong with that. Arya in the books, Arya's like number 2. Bran, I think, is my number 1. Maybe, and that might
Yes.
just be because his chapters have sort of like the most fantasy and horror elements in them, like traditional fantasy and horror elements. He's the one
Mm-hmm.
that gets magic and wood elves and zombies and skeletons attacking him. So yeah, I love that. But Arya's fantastic. What's not to love there?
Yeah, it's funny. Like Bran's chapters, I used to be less interested in, but I loved his chapters in A Dance with Dragons. I think they were my favorite chapters in A Dance with Dragons.
Mm,
I think he just well, he needed to grow up, and then his chapters became like kick-ass awesome. But a lot of the other ones in A Dance with Dragons, I did feel like were so I don't know disconnected. That's probably why it was my least favorite of. I mean, they're all good books, but but Brands were really great, and I'm glad to do it, Betsy. I mean, it is like a big job, but it's like a really fun one. So that's why it's a fun thing to do every year. And I mean, it's funny is like we have already created like a bunch of programming in preparation for this summer, and we'll probably keep a lot of it for next year. But
I hope so.
I think we'll just have to wait and see. Like, hey, maybe a book will come out, or we can't just automatically keep it all. We have to kind of. It's like a living document. You know what I mean? It's like the Constitution. You have to revise things
Right.
depending on what's happening. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I just hope I still get to do my D&D alignment panel because
Yes,
that was
that's
actually
gonna
what you pitched
stay.
to me, and I'm like,
Mhm.
why didn't I think of this? But thank you. And gosh, I when you asked me to be on it, I was like, well, two things. First of all, this is the panel that was made for me. Second of all, you don't say no to Sue when she asks you to do a panel like Con of Thrones because right, because I mean you're kind of the queen of the con, and we all know that. And I for one just cannot thank you enough, not just for creating the space, but for your dedication to making it continue to be a place where we can all get together, share freely, to just making it that safe space. Um,
Well, now I'm just glad that you all keep coming.
and we will all keep coming, I am sure. I mean, we all understand why it didn't happen this year, why it had to get moved back. But yeah, I can't wait for next year. I just can't wait. I need it. I'm feeling it. That it's been over a year since I've seen all my friends, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean of course it's like very sad that we had to cancel it, but I mean I'm okay with it because of we didn't want to have to be scared. No one wants to be scared. So the good thing about it not happening this year is that being at a different location in Orlando, the sort of positive side was it could no longer be at the location we were going to do it at. It's now at the Hyatt Regency Orlando, which is not that far from we were going to be at, and it's actually a way better location, I have to say. The other one was cool, but it was like much bigger. And the one that we're going to be at now, it's a Hyatt Regency. Hyatt Regency is what we were working with in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that like they were so great to work with. So this is a Hyatt Regency Orlando. And, you can kind of look them up online and just see what they look like. And it's much more centralized. So we're going to have all of the programming in like that one location, and then people can have their rooms in that same hotel. So it's going to be so much easier for people going to panels, doing cosplay and all that. It's just so much easier, in a hot place like Orlando. I just think it was kind of a blessing in disguise, frankly, so that we're in a new location. Yay.
Yeah.
And honestly, being drunk and just wandering back to your room.
Well, I mean, I've always said I was a fan of the Dallas location. Yes, it's right here in my backyard, but like that actual physical location where we were that year, it just worked so well because everything was sort of like there's a central area, and then you want food, you go up the escalator. You want marketplace, you go down the escalator. You want your rooms. Your panel rooms, they're all in that hallway. Everything was just kind of like around this central hub. And so like everything you needed was right there. And anytime you were going from one place to another, you were passing through that central area. So you were always seeing people. It felt like we were all right there together the whole time. And I loved that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at like kind of the dining areas at the Hyatt Regency here in Orlando, and it seems pretty similar. Like it has a few like bars and restaurants, and it's all pretty much like there's an atrium kind of set up there as well. So I think it's going to be really great and just so much more relaxing to not have to sprint around everywhere like at Opryland, which right. I mean, Opryland is stunningly gorgeous. I mean, I would want to get married there, but I lost 5 pounds that weekend. Literally, that's not an exaggeration. And I was actually really badly dehydrated. So
I can imagine.
So it was, I mean, I was just literally running and I think we learned a lot, I think, just from running the first convention there. Every year we learn more, like what's going to work better next year.
Right on. And it gets better every year too.
I hope so. And if something doesn't work, then tell us. You know what I mean?
I'm not afraid to speak my opinion, I assure you.
Good.
Okay, well, we're about 5 minutes away from the end. So if you've got anything from the chat, now is your literally last chance. Sue, is there anything you want to say to the fine people? Anything you want to ask me while you've got me here?
Oh, okay. Let's see here. What should we ask Steven?
You really don't have to if you don't want to.
Let's see. Yes, you can always find Steven because he is either wearing a dress or he's dressed like Lyanna Stark, or yes, he's walking around carrying his Stark banner and his full Stark like regalia, which looks very cool and impressive. Or he's helping save trivia by correcting things. So we're all sitting on the floor together. But honestly, like, yes, you're very memorable.
Yeah, it's part of my brand now a little bit.
I guess I would just say that when I see you at the convention, don't be afraid to say hi. I feel like very often people think I'm too busy and like don't want to talk to me, or maybe it's because I have like resting scary eyebrows, so people don't talk to me. So don't be afraid to say hi.
This is Leaf trolling me. Can we friend Leaf? If you can find me on Facebook, feel free to friend me. But Sue, can they friend you on Facebook?
If I've met you, you can.
Aha!
There's also a trick in that you also have to be able to find me. Or I should say if you've met you and if we've interacted online. If I don't recognize your name, I probably won't accept it. That's the other thing is that if I don't recognize your name at all, I have to make sure that you're not one of my patients. Do you see? That's why if I don't recognize your name. So that's why I say if we've interacted before.
Right.
So if we interacted online, then we're cool.
Right.
Yeah, as long as we've interacted online, we're cool. Then it's fine.
Yeah. We have interacted face to face ever so briefly at Con of Thrones last year. I know for a fact we had a sit down conversation for at least 5 whole minutes. And like, I'm just so glad we got to have this type of conversation, a little more relaxed, where you don't have to run off and go do something. I don't have to go to a panel. It's great to sit and have these type of conversations, because everybody that has ever been on I Know That Nerd is somebody who I have met in real life, and every single one of them I met through Con of Thrones. Every single one of them. So this whole series is possible because of Con of Thrones, and I finally got the head honcho to agree to come on, and it's awesome. And I will say this too. I didn't realize this until just a couple of days ago, but this week, August the 11th, so just a few days ago, marked 1 year that I've been doing this channel.
Yay, congratulations.
Started doing weekly live streams 1 year ago, so yay. I should know better than to dance like that. I'll dance like this. But yeah, 1 year of Here Be Dragons. Well, it was still just called Stephen Stark back then, but 1 year of regular content. And here's to many, many more. Sue, you are a great anniversary guest, because again, I think so highly of you just based on what you have done for the fan community indirectly through Watchers on the Wall, through Con of Thrones. Like, my life would have an entirely different look to it today, if not for you. I mean, granted, you have no idea how the things you did are going to affect the world, but I wanted to let you know personally that you have changed my life. And I will never be able to thank you enough for that.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome. And thank all of you guys for being a part of my life all this time. So, yeah, thank you. And thanks to everyone in the chat who showed up to hear us ramble about random nerd stuff, because, it's what we do here. But, yeah, so thanks so much to everyone. Come back next week for... I think we're going to do the hero stream next week. So keep an eye on Twitter. I'll let you know. If you're in the Slack group, keep an eye on that. I'll let you know in there as well. Sue, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you if they want to follow you? I mean, Twitter's the best place. But last words to everyone who came to say hi to you. Okay, well, if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at WatchersOTWall, or my own personal Twitter, which is Sue the Fury, and or just stop by WatchersOnTheWall.com to see what's going on, which is not a whole lot these days, but we still have contests and things like that. So,
and just fantastic writing and fantastic writers.
Yes, we do. And they are actually off, I think, working on a podcast of their own right now. So the Night's Cast is still hard at work, even right now. So they're amazing. I love my crew.
They're fantastic humans. Yeah, I've had a couple of people who write for Watchers on the Wall as guests on here on I Know That Nerd in the past. But really, really glad we got the boss in here for this one. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, everyone, this is the end. I'm always bad at trying to find a way to segue to the end, so I'm just going to bluntly, we're there. We're at the end. But thanks to everyone for showing up, and you know what it is. Until next time, peace and be excellent to each other.